Thank you everyone for being present. Good afternoon to everyone. We're here today to present to you the English version of our report, ClimatSup Business, Training Tomorrow's Economic Actors. I will give you a brief introduction before giving place to Vinciane and Kelvin. I'm Clémence Vorreux, so Higher Education Coordinator at the SHIFT project. Just a quick word on the program for this afternoon. We will first have a presentation of the report by its authors. Then we'll have quick presentations on how to integrate ecological issues into management courses with witness teachers who have done so in marketing, strategy, accounting and management control, and supply chain. In order to do that, we will be divided into 4 rooms. It should be quite easy and simple. We'll hope so. And a third part would be in workshops. So only for those of you who received a confirmation email. We're very sorry, we had a lot of volunteers, so we couldn't accept everyone. But for those of you who couldn't get in, we will have people taking notes and reports of the discussions being published a bit later. And just to make sure, this will be on a different link that those of you who received an email will have, so in another room. So just a quick word on what is the SHIFT project for those of you who don't know us. It's better to know where we speak from. We are a think tank aiming to decarbonize the economy. We are a non-profit organization of general interest, guided by the requirement of scientific rigor. And our mission is to inform and influence the debate on energy transition. So inform, we publish reports, and influence, we try to give voice to the conclusions of this work, to everyone involved in decision-making on the different topics that we address. We are funded by mostly companies, mostly French companies, but not only, but also other private sponsors, depending on the project we carry on, but also some institutional sponsors, as well as more and more individual donators. Well, we're trying to expand in this area. The SHIFT project and higher education is a story that started in 2018, I'd say, with the first report in 2019 on the stake of how at this time the energy transition and usually mostly ecological transition was taught in higher education in France. From that, we published last year 3 new reports, one on engineering school and how their courses could and should address ecological issues in all courses. More recently, in last November, we published the report we're going to present to you today on business schools and other institutions that teach business and management in the same way, and also a report on finance training in last December. We also carry other initiatives led by the shifters, who are the volunteers who help the SHIFT project in our different projects. They created a collaborative pedagogical platform, enseignerleclimat.org, which enables teachers to share resources and experience on how they teach the ecological transition. They also created an observatory of trainings regarding transition in Belgium, Education for Climate. And they're also currently creating a cooperative of teachers. Well, yeah, that's actually being created right now. We also work in a very favorable context in higher education that we need to notice. A strong demand from students, but also alumni, teachers, and professors in order to address ecological issues in all courses and all trainings. And also an institutional acknowledgement in France with the Jean Jouzel report that some of you may be familiar with, but also the climate and biodiversity plan of the Ministère de l'Enseignement Supérieur et de la Recherche, which are very helping develop all the conclusions of our reports in this regard. So without further ado, I will leave the room to Kelvin Frisquet and Vinciane Martin, the authors of the current report, ClimatSup Business, Training Tomorrow's Economic Actors.
Thank you, Clémence. Hi, everybody. I'm very pleased to be with you today. I'm Kelvin Frisquet. I'm one of the co-authors with Vinciane of the report. The publication of the English version of this report is the occasion for us to go a little bit further in the presentation of its content in the perspective of professors. And in doing so, we hope to inspire you to read the report and go through its rich content. Alors, first, the question we are going to try to answer is, why is it so important to integrate ecological issues in management training? So, and by ecological issues, we mean both physical constraints, climate warming, biodiversity collapse, energy and resources depletion, and the social consequences. So the next slide, the scientific consensus is clear. Human activities are the cause of major imbalances in the Earth system. We are currently on a trajectory of global warming close to 2 degrees by mid-century. Biodiversity has never declined at such a rapid rate. We reached the peak of conventional oil in 2018, and at the same time, other mineral resources are becoming scarcer. So as we see, the ecological parameters of the world are changing rapidly and drastically, and it already affects organizations because of regulatory changes, for instance, of change in consumer expectation, because of the direct impacts of ecological issues on organization, like, for instance, supply chain disruptions, price volatility, water scarcity, etc. So managers, whatever their current or future role, already have to deal with these issues, with the challenge raised by these issues, and things are not going to get better. But I'd say to reduce the reason why managers must be trained in ecological issues to the sole perspective of adapting to the impact of these issues on organization is to miss something important. Indeed, not only will managers have to deal with the impacts of ecological issues and on their organizations, but they also have an important role to play in the transition to a world respecting the Earth boundaries. So organizations have a major impact on their system, and managers have a role to play in attenuating these impacts. For instance, by making sure they measure their ecological footprint, by designing business models, taking into consideration the planetary boundaries, by shaping consumer preferences towards a more sustainable lifestyle, and etc. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, management training does not yet prepare for this. Despite raising awareness among students, professors, and management education institutions, despite some initiatives by establishments and teachers, progress is too slow. Vinciane?
Sorry. And this is why we led this project, because, well, we are far from reaching this goal. So Audencia, the Audencia Nantes Business School, reached out to the SHIFT project, and together with other higher education institutions, we've been working on 2 projects. So the first one is dedicated to higher education and management. The second one is focusing more specifically on finance education. So the latter has not been translated into English yet, but it will be in the following months. And so today we will focus on the first one, so on the report dedicated to higher education in management in general. So this report is aimed at all stakeholders in higher education and management. So we provide for all the stakeholders recommendations and tools, but today for this short presentation, we focus more specifically on professors, on lecturers, so basically on teaching. And we tried with this report to answer the question, what should graduates know at the end of a training in management? And to start answering this question, I'll give the ground back to Kelvin.
Yes, thank you, Vinciane. And just to start with, everything we are sharing here today and in this report has been designed or has been created based on multiple interviews, multiple workshops with professional from higher education in management, and professional in management and all the discipline of management. So I think we interviewed about 150 professionals in management and in higher education in management. We did multiple workshops. We had a task force working on specifically on this framework, like for several weeks. So it's not just like us coming out with these ideas, restituting what the community of the people we interviewed and we interacted with gave us as input. So what do managers need to know, and what competencies should they develop to adapt their organization and attenuate their ecological impacts? So based on this workshop and interviews, we developed a competencies and knowledge framework answering to this question. So the synthesis of these frameworks you see on screen and that we will detail now sums up some of the most important competencies and knowledge required to understand ecological issues and become an actor of the ecological transition as a professional and a citizen. So in the report, each knowledge and competency are broken down in very details and with references and resources to those who want to incorporate them in their courses. And we're just going to give you a very high-level overview of it today. So if we go a little bit into details, on the right side of your screen, in the bluish part of the screen, there is the knowledge, and the knowledge itself can be divided in 3 areas of knowledge. At the center, in orange, knowledge about the social objectives collectively agreed upon by human beings that are inspired by the SDGs social objectives. At the periphery of the figure, knowledge about physical constraints. To reach the social objectives, we need to take into consideration physical constraints. So students need to understand the order of magnitude of these issues, origins, mechanisms at play, and so on. So it's where we have like this. Finally, to tend towards social objectives while respecting the physical constraints, students need to master a certain number of levels which are related to the disciplines they learn in a management education institution. For instance, they need to understand that traditional accounting does not take into consideration social and natural capital, and that there are other types of accounting that are able to do so. They had to be taught that. Last point, we insisted a lot in the report on the systemic nature of all these dimensions. So not only ecological issues between the different ecological issues, but also between the ecological issues and the societal objectives. This is a very important part of our report. On the left side of the screen, you see the skills which are required to integrate this knowledge and act. So you see four macro skills, which are broken down into several ones in the report, with also examples, resources for each one of them. If we take an example, adopt a systemic, interdisciplinary, and ethic approach, which is really a transversal macro skills. And we focus in it on the notion of interdisciplinarity. This is a major point for teaching ecological issues in business higher education, because ecological issues involve natural sciences, which are traditionally not present in business programs. It involves also to integrate engineering sciences, social. So it's the reason why we really stressed this macro competency. So as a consequence, business students should develop a scientific culture. They will have more and more objectives as managers to respect regarding the environmental impact reduction. To do so, they need to understand how to produce differently, what product or services should be stopped because it is not possible to reduce its impact, and so on. And to do so, they should be able to understand, for instance, GHG analysis, product life cycle analysis, and so on. And to do so require a scientific background. So this is really a very fast overview of what the report contains. For each one of this knowledge and macro competency, it's broken down into several other ones, and we'll find references, resources that allow you to really grasp all of them, get to know them better, and integrate them into your courses. Vinciane?
Yes, I will give you just a few examples about the competences, about the skills we suggest that all graduates should know or should have acquired at the end of their degree in management. So here you find the 4 blocks of skills that Kelvin just described to you. As he said, it's really just an overview. As for each of these blocks, there are 3 different skills, and for each of these skills, we give more specific examples. I'm just going to give maybe a more specific example on the need for developing a scientific culture. For instance, I mean, you may wonder why it would be so important for any kind of manager to develop a scientific culture, but let's just take the example of marketing. In marketing, you might to decide which products you may want to put in the markets, which product you may want to change, and how, or which product maybe you want to withdraw and to stop selling. You may need to understand carbon footprint of the products. You may need to understand life cycle assessments, and just to understand these tools and to be able to use them and to take decisions upon them, then you need at least a base of scientific culture. Another example on the 3rd block of skills, conceiving the transformation of organizations, which is maybe the block which is the most focused on really management education. One of the skills in this macro skill is to incorporate a strategy or business model in a context of physical constraints, and that for businesses, or for any kind of organizations, it means both to take into consideration adaptations to, for instance, to climate hazards, to transition risks, to energy scarcity. So it means to be able to consider risks with these physical constraints, but also it means to be able to mitigate the impacts on these ecological issues. For instance, as a future manager, you may need to be able to understand where your business plan is in relation to the IPCC scenarios. So that's an example of a skill that students now should acquire and that they currently mostly do not. To complement this knowledge and skills base that we've just presented together with Kelvin, we have a few, we have 4 profession sheets which try to answer this question, what to teach in the specialization courses. So for these 4 professions, strategy, marketing, management control, and also purchasing and supply chain, we give an overview of what would be the evolution of the professions to take into account ecological transition. And we also give some specific knowledge and skills related to these disciplines, to these professions, that would need to be acquired for students who takes a specialization in these professions. Here you can only find the illustration, but each of them is a few pages long. So now that we've given you an overview of the content of the report and of what graduates should know once they've graduated in management, I'll just show you quickly the different tools that we provide in the report. So the first one is the knowledge and skills base, which we've presented to you. Here you can see what it looks like in the reports. In this knowledge and skills base, in the report, we will also find a focus on digital sobriety. Then there are the 4 profession sheets that I've just presented. There's also a spreadsheet to complete the base. Unfortunately, it exists only in French, but actually many of the resources that that are that are given in the spreadsheets, they're in English. So even if you're not French speaking, you should be able to use it at least a bit. We also have tried to adapt the knowledge part of the knowledge and skills base in the core curriculum. So we're taking a Grande École program. So basically, we're taking the example of a 3-year program that gives the basics of management. We also have a collection of feedback from experiences of different establishments. Unfortunately, it's also only in French. We haven't translated it into English, but in the English report, we'll find some examples some examples of feedbacks that institutions gave to us. And we also have some recommendations specifically designed for teachers. So thank you very much for your attention. We hope that all these tools will be useful for you to integrate ecological issues into your management courses. And now we'll give the ground to the big part of this presentation, which are the presentations by teachers, by professors, sorry. So we will split now into, sorry, we don't have time now for questions, but we'll have the time for questions after the presentations by the professors. So you will be able to split into 4 online rooms: strategy, marketing, accounting, and management control, and supply chain, according to what discipline you want to follow. So I think you should soon be able to do so.